Has anyone seen my mind? That is not a rhetorical question. That's actually the title of a new show, a revuesical that is created by two of the folks that we have right here in the neighborhood right now. One of them is Bill Russell, and he has written several musicals, including the Texas Chainsaw Musical, which had a very cutting sense of humor. Also, the very celebrated Elegies for Angels, Punks, and Raging Queens, and of course the off-Broadway hit musical Pageant, and the Broadway Tony-nominated musical Sideshow. To date, the only Broadway musical about Siamese twins. Although I'm kind of hoping that changes. I think there's more to delve into with all of that. So there's so many sides to it. But also with us is the director of this new show, Has Anyone Seen My Mind? And that is Justin Ross Cohen. And what a career he's had in the theater. Actor and dancer. He was in the original Pippin as an understudy. Yes,
No,
no.
not quite. Well, I was in the original Pippin, replacing the late Christopher Chadman as Lewis. So yeah, that's my role there.
And you also came into the original runs of A Chorus Line, right? I mean, you were Greg. Were you an original, of course, second, or where were you in that?
No, shortly after the show opened on Broadway, Michael sent the original company to Los Angeles, which is when within a few months, Sandal Bergman and Vicki Frederick, Catherine Ann Wright, some other notable, brilliant dancer actors went into the show. So it's often assumed that we were in the original company. We were in the original production, is the technical term, and yeah.
Well, fair enough, fair enough. What about the Magic Show? Were you also an understudy in that?
Yes, I was. That's when I was 18, and it was my second Broadway show. The first is where I met Bill. It's a little known show. I have spoken to people like Seth Rudetsky, who goes, I've never heard of it.
Is this Got to Go Disco? Are you talking about Got
No,
to? No, that's different.
no, it's Brainchild.
Was that
Bill,
on Broadway?
would you like to talk a little bit about Brainchild?
Well, it's
How,
not technically a Broadway show because it never opened, but it was the marquee was up at the Ambassador, and we did a production in Philadelphia that was kind of disastrous, but it had a score by Michel Legrand and Hal David. And that's where Justin and I met. That was in 1974.
So wait,
yeah,
Bill, what was your, if you didn't co-write that, you were an actor in it, or what was your?
No, I was, well, I the book and direction was by Maxine Klein, who was a professor at the Boston University, and I had reviewed the production there before it was a musical, and she asked me to help her with the book. So I was not billed. I got a little money, but I was basically a consultant on the book.
What was so wrong with the book that it was a disaster and then still didn't even open on Broadway?
Oh, there were so many issues she had no experience with musicals for one thing, and the there was a lot of friction in all areas. Hal David did not want to rewrite any lyrics, and it was really kind of a nightmare.
Now, how did you guys pick yourselves up? Justin, you want to jump in because you sound like, Well, how do you, everybody's got triumphs and tragedies and like things you think are going to be huge hits and they're not. How do you pick yourself up, dust yourself off after a flop and a big disappointment? Well, either or of you.
Well, I had a whole other life happening at the time, so I just went back to that. I went back to that basically.
Right. Yeah. And what about Justin?
I went on to my next show, which was the Magic Show. My timing was blessed, let's put it that way, to come of age at a time I was classically trained. When I was 17, I joined Houston Ballet, and within one season realized that I was more inclined towards the musical theater and acting and comedy and eventually directing. So I came back to New York, which is my hometown, and just was lucky enough that people like Michael Bennett and Bob Fosse and Grover Dale and Tony Stevens, Graziella Danielle, all these people were, these incredible people were creating things. And I was now 18 and 19 and 20 with a classical background, but a jazz, rock sensibility. So with, an afro. I mean, at that time, I remember I would go to auditions for like Good News, and there's all these guys with, their all-American looks, and I'm standing there, and it was like, thank you. But fortunately, there were contemporary shows happening. And while I was performing, Bill, his star started to rise as a writer. He was creating things, and I've always thought that his ability to create with words is extraordinary. So we began collaborating. Bill wrote a show called Fortune, which was off Broadway at the Actors Playhouse, which ran for like a year. And there was a big billboard. It was a big deal because it was not but one of the first really out and proud gay musicals.
Actually, I'm curious. I didn't remember that. I don't know the show. It's Four tune. But
Yeah.
what does the title represent? What is it? What do you
Well,
have
it's
to do?
about it's a gay farce about a young musical group. They're kind of like Manhattan Transfer, two men, two women, and they're touring behind their first album. And one couple is typical musical theater ingenues, and they're supposedly straight, and the other couple are typical musical second banana roles, and they're both gay. Justin was the guy, and they're married, but they're gay, and they're out front of it and about it, and they both have other relationships happening. And over the course of the show, the two women get involved, and then the two men get involved, and they're all hiding it from each other. And there's a big discovery scene. And what I think was different about it at that time was most of the gay plays were really like kind of slit your wrists, boys in the band going at each other. And this was a musical farce. And I
What
think
year? What is it? Late '70s or early? When were you
it
doing
was
this?
1980.
'80, just on the cusp.
Yeah, and
So
it
yeah,
ran for 7.5 months at the Actors Playhouse. So,
nice.
which for a first time out was really encouraging. And Justin stole the show, of course.
Thank you. Well, I had the honor of introducing a song that is now being sung brilliantly in our production. Has anyone seen my mind? The song is titled "I'd Rather Be a Fairy Than a Troll."
I'd rather be a fairy than a troll.
And as bold and brash and necessary as it was in 1980, in 2025, it's even more necessary and powerful. And the gentleman who's doing it currently, Kelvin Moonlow, is amazing. He does a great job with it.
So both of you tell us about this show. Has anyone seen my mind? Which we should tell folks happens, pardon me, once a week at the Laurie Beachman Theater, which is over on West 42nd between 8th and 9th Avenue. So is it a review? It's life in New York, but what is it?
Well, it's hard to describe, but you called it a revusical, which I really kind of like that term. It's built around four decades, I've been writing these musings, and they're sort of my go-to form. I have written 16 full-length musicals, all of which have been produced. Not always in New York, but they've all seen the light of a stage. But those take so friggin' long and involve so many people. And these are something I can do on my own and finish usually in a relatively short amount of time. And at the end of every year, I send out 5 of them to a list of longtime friends and collaborators and people who've been an important part of that year. And Justin has been on that list for decades, at
Since
least
Moonshine.
since the 80s. And not so long ago as these things happen, he called me and said he had been reading one of that year's packet to friends over the phone, and the response had been really enthusiastic. And he said, I think we should do a show built around these. And I was like, wow, okay, well, let me send you what I have, which was over 500 pieces. And I suggested that we each pick 25, and we matched on 13 of those, and those became the basis for the show. And there
Nice.
are 9 songs, and many of the lyrics of the songs also came from the musings because I have several composers on my list, and sometimes they just set them and send me the result, and that's always a wonderful surprise.
Yeah.
So that's how the show developed.
Wow. And Justin, let me ask you, like, your method of direct, because you've directed quite a few things over the years. So, what is your approach? Are you just trying to do what the author wants, or do you have your own sort of vision? Is there a stamp that you put on a Justin Ross Cohen show?
Well, I'd like to think there is. I've had the great pleasure and honor of working with writers like Bill Russell and Mark Saltzman, who wrote Romeo and Bernadette. And both, well, okay, so you ask, like, do I have a method? When I read a script, and I guess it has to do with my dance background, I don't literally look for the rhythm, but as I'm reading it, I hope for the rhythm of how words are put together, how thoughts are put together, emotions, and what that story tells. But it is when I read something and I start to get visual images in my head, which is what happened for decades, numerous times with these musings where I would go, my God, I can visualize this as a scene. I can visualize this as opposed to having been written by one singular voice. This is a duologue or 4 people confronting one another. So I guess it's rhythm and then my job, if necessary, is to help the writer find the best emotional route for their intention, because my career has been primarily working with writers on new pieces, developing original works. I haven't, well, you know what? I directed a production of Nonsense years ago, and I was amazed at how well constructed that show is. It is a brilliant vaudeville. If you really deconstruct it and you see the solos and the trios and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to throw that same question to Bill Russell in the sense of, is there some through line, theme, feeling that we can tell a Bill Russell musical or show from anybody else's?
Well, there are certain themes I'm attracted to. I mean, gay liberation has been a big part of my life, and that's certainly a part of my shows. Um, and I mean, I love writing lyrics, and so I think my shows have a certain lyricism. This one certainly does. It's all about the rhythm, and I have a background in comedy. I put together the comedy team of Monteith and Rand, who were on Broadway, and I worked with them for 14 years. And that's an element of many of my shows. Well, most of my shows, even serious shows like Elegies for Angels, Punks, and Raging Queens, has a lot of humor in it because it's an AIDS piece, and I always say it's relatively easy to get tears with this material, but the challenge is to find the laughs. And I'm a whore for laughs, especially in that show.
Oh,
So, yeah, those are some of the themes that have sort of.
now you have also mentioned that, and I don't want to make this what my people would call a canina horror, where I say it and now suddenly you have to worry about it. But lyric writing apparently comes easily to you. You don't get writer's block. It just no problem.
It's yes, it's compared with writing musical books, which are such a challenge. Lyrics, I could write a lyric every day and be completely happy, you know?
Okay,
Yeah.
so who were the people who most interested or most influenced you, Bill Russell, in terms of was it Rodgers and Hammerstein, was it Sondheim, or was it someone we wouldn't necessarily expect, Dorothy
Well,
Fields or
my
someone?
musical influences, I mean, I did have musical influences from musical theater. Uh, I'm a big fan of Frank Lesser's work, but my musical influences growing up were more rock and roll. I mean, the Beatles, Eleanor Rigby is the song that made me want to write lyrics. Hair was the musical that made me want to write rock musicals. That was a big and still is a big thing for me. And I always felt in a way like I was rebelling against Rodgers and Hammerstein, but now I have the greatest respect for them and what they do. So, but that's, and Joni Mitchell, I mean, huge influence for me.
Oh, man. Now let's get back to Justin because did you
Sure.
have that thing as a dancer when you hit your late 20s, early 30s? You had to pivot, or did you get injured, as so many of them do? It's like if I dance one more year, I will never walk again, or not. Or by then you had moved more into kind of, or what was the trajectory?
I had moved on. Um, Bill worked alongside me for years. He was my director. He was a co-writer of a nightclub act that I was doing, uh, which was gaining a great deal of attention from HBO, Caroline Hirsch of Caroline's Comedy Club. Their problem with it was that it was too bold, too out. And I mean, because we had songs in the show, like I took I'd Rather Be a Fairy Than a Troll, but we also had Seth Allen's Crazy for Dick and songs like Still Breaking Up with Eddie. And it was out. It was out. It was wonderful. It was so freeing. But they said it's too soon. It's too soon. And they were right. It wasn't until 1990 that Bob Smith from Funny Gay Males was on uh, The Tonight Show, introduced as the first uh, gay male comic.
Oh,
And
wow.
Yeah.
um,
It's just a total parenthetical thing, but the producer, the host of this program, Dave, was actually a classmate and appeared in a show of Mark Jaffe Cohen, who was one of the other
yes, of
funny gay
course.
males. Yeah, so.
Of course. No, I mean, there were numerous people who were doing what Bill and I were doing, just trying to get it out there, leading, the parade. And then, the AIDS crisis hit. And
Oh, so when they said it was too soon, Did they mean because AIDS was so tragic that they
No,
didn't
no,
want to
no,
make?
no. They meant it was too soon commercially for
Yeah.
America to accept that kind of humor and observation. And then because Bill and I were working on the show prior to the AIDS epidemic. We started, I believe, in 1983 was when we did first,
Yeah.
and but in quick order, to the point where the show included some AIDS material. I sang "Fire and Rain" in memory of many boys, in 1987. Anyway, long story short, it was wonderful to be working in such company at that time and expressing ourselves. And not to get off the subject, but one of my passions is to really explore the PTSD that many of us have suffered from the AIDS crisis.
I mean, how did you guys both get through that year? Were you in New York? Were St. Vincent's and all that? I mean,
Yeah,
I guess how many you must have lost tons and tons of being in the theater world.
hundreds of friends and acquaintances. And we very much went through that together. And then we started working on Elegies in 87, I think was the first reading, or maybe 88. But uh and that was a great release of that. Just being able to do something, in the face of all that was really, really, and we had amazing experiences with that because we were doing it in the white hot center of the war on AIDS. And the cast, we had people with, lesions all over their bodies, and people were going into the hospital during rehearsals and dying during the run. And I mean, it was just like so immediate. And everybody involved, well, not everybody, but most people involved had a personal connection to the subject matter, and they had lost friends. But we had some straight guys who really had not been touched by it at all. And boy, did they get an education, because it was a huge cast and they all had to change together. And, it was really memorable.
Well, all right, let's get to some happier stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
so please, Justin, tell me, do you have any memories, any stories about Doug Henning when you were in the magic show? What was he like? Was he really hippie-ish, or, what the hell was Doug Henning like?
Doug was exactly as he presented himself. He really was that very kind, goofy Canadian.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
He was generous, no pretension.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, he was lovely. He was absolutely lovely. And we were required to sign a release that we could not discuss the tricks,
Yeah.
well, not the tricks, the illusions, how they work. And I'll tell you, you don't want to know. For those who are listening, you don't want to know how it works because it just ruins it for life. Um, that said, I would stand in the wings and watch Doug. There was a section in the show where he would do sleight of hand with coins and newspapers, and that work was extraordinary. And, I mean, his ability to do that, that wasn't any bells and whistles, because subsequently, when Doug left the show, he was replaced by an actor, Joe Abaldo, who was small enough, and wiry enough to to be able to do some of the illusions much like Doug because of their height.
But he couldn't do the close-up magic. He didn't have
And
that.
that, honestly, because I had left the show by
Oh,
then,
yeah.
I don't know how they filled. I don't, that 5-minute section.
Now, and another question for Justin is there's a story you tell about when you were in, or when you first went into a chorus line, and you were wondering about the character you were playing, and Michael Bennett, the director, said something to you and
Yes.
gave you the, like, oh, boom. What?
Yes. Yes. It was actually the very first day of rehearsal.
Oh,
Um, we were given our scripts, and I remember I was sitting on the floor, and Michael came over and he bent down and he whispered in my ear, "Write this on your front page." And I went, "Okay." And I opened it and I took my pencil and he said, "Greg is a king, not a queen."
and what did you take that to mean? I mean, we can sort of assess it, but what did you draw from that to play Greg?
Well, because there are, and this was a breakthrough in 1975 on Broadway, a year earlier, you know what, the public, in a musical to have three out gay characters. And one was very sassy, and, you know, the jester, and that's Bobby, Tommy Walsh. And then you have the Paul character who has the beautiful monologue in the middle, you know, and his story is tragic. And then you have Greg, who, you know, is the eldest of the group and very comfortable with himself. He has a line at the end when the director says, "How, you know, what will you do when you can't dance anymore?" And everybody's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." And I would gratefully not dance and, you know, just cook. And this one is, "I can't do anything else." And Greg says, "Just get me through the day. One day at a time is enough for me to deal with." It took me years, actually, because I went back into the show a few times. I played the eldest character on the line when I was 22. So, you know, much like BB Newirth, who went into the show as Sheila at like 18 and killed, you know, it wasn't until I had done the show a couple of more times on Broadway as a replacement and then the film
Oh,
to really get. He's saying that he's an addict and he's in a 12-step program, one day at a time, one day at a time. That's a 12-step program, you know. So Greg, technically, you know, is like the elder statesman.
yeah.
So rather than playing him as this, because he does, there's a whole little, not little, Bible, if you will, of the backstories
Okay,
that
sure.
nobody in the audience knows. But if it's being taught well, the material, you're taught why you're standing here and so is standing here because of friction in a show 3 years ago. And that's why, you know,
Ah,
there's not even any dialogue, but the audience is going, "Oh, what's going on?" There's life. It's that life that's created. So,
and so important for you as a director, no question about that. Now, Bill, back to Bill Russell, gotta ask you because you did work. I mean, there have been interesting choices for major musicals. I mean, you know, Book of Mormon. Who would think? Who would think? You know, they did a Broadway musical of James Joyce's short story, The Dead. Okay, sure, why not? Yeah, and it was good actually. But yeah, and then how about a show? And been asked this a million times, but how about a show about twin sisters who are joined at the hips and buttocks? And there's a did you look at that and go yes, or did you let it go no? But you can let it go.
I did go, yes. Bobby Longbottom, the original director, the director of the original production, his boyfriend at the time had seen this terrible movie that the Hilton sisters made called Chained for Life, and had told Bobby about it. And Bobby told me, he said, it's the real life conjoined twins, and they sang and danced and played musical instruments. And I think we should do a show about them. And I immediately went, yes. I just thought the idea was so theatrical of two people joined together and who were, I mean, they were the highest paid act in the history of vaudeville. And they, when they were like 16, they were making $5,000 a week at the top of the Depression, height of the Depression, which would be hundreds of thousands of dollars a week now. And also at the time, I was known, Justin and I were both known to frequent downtown clubs. And there were these two guys, they were Broadway chorus boys, really, who would show up at these clubs in matching costumes, and they would sashay through the club as if they were joined at the hip. And the first time I saw them, I think was at Limelight, and they were both dressed in ersatz Heidi lederhosen and doing these little routines. And that image had already was really planted in my mind when Bobby suggested it. And then as we did research on the Hiltons, it just seemed like, oh, well, I also, I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota. My grandparents were cattle ranchers over the border in Wyoming. Everybody called my father Cowboy Russell. And I felt like an alien that had been dropped into this hyper macho environment. So when I started exploring sideshows and freaks, I'm like, I feel right at home here. I know what this is because I grew up feeling that, So it just felt really natural to me. And it was not until about 3 years into the project, Manny Eisenberg, the producer, came up to me and he said, Bill, you do realize there's a real ick factor about this. And I was like, what? He said, oh, people hear Siamese twins and they just go, I won't see that. I won't. And actually, it had never occurred to me because I was so fascinated by them. And I also thought it was so theatrical.
And what's interesting is that you took their story seriously, because I could
Oh,
see,
yeah, absolutely.
like the South Park guys doing it, but doing it in a whole kind of right. But you were like, no, this is kind of a tragic story, but you can obviously have elements of duets and music and stuff like that.
Well, also, there had been an off-Broadway show called 20 Fingers and 20 Toes, which was based on them or inspired by them. But the author we met him later, and he told us it was just an excuse to make bad Siamese twin jokes. And it really was, we had sat on the idea for 7 years before we started writing it. And that opened during that period, and we thought, oh gosh, there goes our idea, but it was not well received. And by the time we actually were writing it, and nobody remembered that really.
No, and also, by the way, we should mention, let me get in quick, before I forget, that Bill Russell is in the South Dakota Hall of Fame. Awesome. Now, Justin, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, just listening to you both, speaking and, asking the question about, Bill's inspiration, his source, what could have attracted you to Siamese twins. And I think that the overriding theme that I find in Bill's work, and you can see it, looking behind him and looking at, the series of posters, is humanity. And I think that there is great humanity in every one of the pieces that he's written. Yes, the subject matter often gears towards gay relationships, two women, two women and two men, but two Siamese twins. But the common theme, the common thread is all about people being able to express themselves and their heart and their truth.
Well, one truth that we want to remind people about is that you can go on November 10th, November 17th, November 24th to the Laurie Beachman Theater. It's in the West Bank Cafe, right? It's
Right.
like that.
Downstairs, but you have to go into the cafe to get there.
So look for the cafe outside and the Laurie Beach Swing Theater's inside over on West 42nd Street. Get your tickets. And I'm assuming, if all goes well, you already did one performance. How did it go?
Really well, really well. This is a hard show to describe, and people don't quite know what they're going to see. We had friends there who had no idea what they hadn't read anything about it, and the response has just been incredible. We did do a short run in Reading, Pennsylvania last year, and or no, last January actually, and that was another situation where they just had no idea, and they were just really hanging on every word. It's been a thrilling response, and we have an insanely talented cast and band.
So, and I'm sure the eyeballs are on. If it goes well for the rest of the month, you have probably all Broadway and other. So this leads to another question for both you guys who have been part of the New York theater scene for so long. And we talked about getting through the AIDS era. What do you feel about New York theater in the post-COVID era? How's it been? Is it coming back to normal? Are there still terrible problems? Especially off and off Broadway. What about it?
It's very, very challenging, mainly because the amount of money involved to do anything now is just insane. And Justin and I had a Zoom call with my agent, Jack Tantleff, asking if he could help us, get this show on stage. And he said, there is such a backup still from COVID. There were all these shows in the pipeline that are now just coming to be produced. So there's a backup. And it was his idea to do these sneak peeks in cabaret situations, which has worked out really well. So it's very flexible that way. We're able to do it in a lot of different
and Justin, what has your experience been like post 2020, 2021 into the past couple of years? Justin, your experience, yeah.
That for me? Well, sadly, my show Romeo and Bernadette, well, gratefully, it's such a dichotomy. I'm so grateful that Romeo and Bernadette was so beautifully produced by Eric Krebs at Theater 555, and the cast was extraordinary, and the Times gave us a critic's pick. But it opened when everybody was hoping and praying that we're done, but people were still wearing masks. So it was very, very tricky. And since then, as Bill says, the backup has prevented shows from being produced not just in New York, but around the country as well. I'm still waiting for a few regionals to get through theirs before, they can
consider. Now that also brings me to a question for Bill. You mentioned that you've written like 12 or 6, was it 16 full-length music?
16.
If you could pick one or two to see revived in a commercial way, whether Broadway or off-Broadway, like which would it be? Which are the ones you wish people would really, come back and see, or if they don't know it at all?
Well, gratefully, Elegies for Angels, Punks, and Raging Queens. I mean, when that opened in Soho in 1989, it was an extraordinary experience, but we thought that we'll never get this done again, because you go to a commercial producer and say, I've got this show, and they go, well, tell me about it. Well, it's got an enormous cast, it's written in verse, and it's about AIDS. And they're like, where do I sign up? And all
the characters are Siamese. So not only do these are all attached, yeah.
But it still gets done, and it to this day, and especially in the UK, they use it in all the drama schools. So that has been very gratifying. And Sideshow did have a wonderful revival on Broadway. Mm-hmm. Pageant had a revival off Broadway. Shows that I would love to see revived are Unexpected Joy, which ran at the York Theater in 2018, and then in London.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Isn't the York involved in the Beachman thing, aren't
Yes,
they? Yeah.
they're producing the Beachman performances.
Oh, got it. Sorry. Yeah. And what else?
And
What's another show? Unexpected Joy and what?
Unexpected Joy. Well, I would love to see Fortune, my first musical that Justin was in. I would love to see that revived because I still think it plays well. There are many of my shows. Lucky Duck, which I wrote with Henry Krieger, which is our crazy version of the Ugly Duckling story. Um, I think that could well play more.
Hmm. Now, what are you? I guess last questions for the marvelous people, Bill Russell and Justin Ross Cohen here. So you've got this. It's up. You're directly working on it. What's ahead for the next half a year? Other projects you're working on?
Well, I've been working on a memoir which I started in during the pandemic, and I'm quite far along with it. And I've shared it with some people, and the response has been really, really positive. So I'm going to keep working on that if I ever get back to it. I spent the morning doing rewrites on this show because every time I hear things that I want to try to make better.
Cool. And what about Justin? Do you have any directing or other kinds of acting or other projects?
Sure. Well, there's still work to be done regarding our show.
Sure.
We're in that process of discovery, and people who came to see the show Monday night at the Beachman heard material that for the first time that was not in other pieces. And the people that come on Monday are going to hear some new material. So Bill and I are still working on that. We've recorded an original cast recording of Romeo and Bernadette, which hopefully will lead to some other productions outside of New York, because when it closed, and with the pandemic, we called and they would say, "Oh yeah, I heard about that, but we have our lineup." So I'm hopeful for that. And I recently moved up to Hudson, New York. I'm a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in Brooklyn in the Flatbush section, Midwood section of Flatbush. Went to Performing Arts High School. Love New York. Love, 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 love New York. But it's really started to make me crazy to where I was asking, has anyone seen my mind? Um, I've moved up to Hudson. So one of my intentions is to work towards calming down a little bit and allowing myself some freedom to figure out what the next steps might be in this very new landscape that you were asking Bill about.
Is there a memoir in you, perhaps?
Yes, there is. There is. And I'm trying to figure it out. One of my titles is I Was a Teenage Sex Addict. And
Well,
that's a,
you and let's see, John Leguizamo and Bruce J. Friedman and a lot of people kind of gone there. Yeah, and actually we've all gone there. Let's face it. But anywho, let's leave that aside and get back to the one reminder that we want to tell people: has anyone seen my mind? It's running 3 more times. November 10th, November 17th, November 24th at the Laurie Beachman Theater over on West 42nd. Is it in 8th and 9th or 9th and 10th?
9th and 10th.
9th
It's
and 10th.
just west of 9th.
That's West End 9th Avenue. Sorry about that. Get your tickets, go see it, and be grateful that we have so much work from the wonderful people in front of us, Justin Ross Cohen and Bill Russell. I wish you much, broken legs, because you don't see Muslims.
Thank you.
Kanaharas.
Kanaharas for all your projects, of course, including Has Anyone Seen My Mind? Thank you, and shalom to you both.
Thank you so much.